What's up everybody, I'm Jason and welcome back to some more tips and tricks for the Canon EOS R5. So this is the 60th episode of this series that I have done, and so far I have not actually talked about shooting video on the EOS R5 and the settings and functions and features relating to that. Well, that changes now. We are going to start looking at the video capabilities of the R5 and we are going to start at the basics. So, in this video, we are going to actually take things all the way back to what's probably the most basic thing that the camera deals with, and that is actually switching the camera into video mode or between photo mode and video mode. So, I'm going to cover a couple of things in this video. The first thing is going to start with photo and video modes. What's the deal with that? I'm going to talk about how to nominally switch the camera between photo and video modes, so the normal way that you would probably do it, and then we're going to look at a couple of shortcuts to get the camera into video mode or between photo and video mode faster. So let's start with photo and video modes. What is it and why is it or why are they there? So this is something that is arguably specific to the R5. I think it also may be the case with the R3, but this is certainly kind of a new approach to dealing with video and photo settings on Canon cameras compared to, what they did in the past. So I shot with 5D Mark IV DSLRs prior to moving to the R5, and on those cameras, you had a mode dial that set the exposure mode, manual, aperture, priority, shutter, etc. And then you had a little switch on the back of the camera that would flip between still mode and video mode. So when you flip the switch to video mode, the camera would go into video mode, but it would use the same exposure settings and the same exposure mode that you had the camera set for when you were shooting stills. Now the R5 takes things, makes them mostly separate modes. So you could think of these as top-level configurations for the camera. Photo over here, video over here. That's the overall sort of configuration of the camera. So to shoot video, you have to be in video mode. If you're in still mode, you can't shoot video, etc. Now, this is much more tightly coupled than it is in the case of the R5C. You do not have to turn the camera off and reboot it into a completely separate operating system. That is an R5C thing. This is all integrated into the standard EOS Photo OS, but the camera just has basically two separate states that it works in. Now, because it has two separate states, some of the settings that the camera has set to are going to be saved in the specific or for the specific states. So, for example, the exposure mode that you're shooting in, manual, aperture, priority, etc., that is saved separately for the two states. So you switching between photo and video mode, you may also be switching between, say, manual and aperture priority or something like that. Your exposure settings are saved independently in the two modes, photo and video. So if you have your camera set to shooting at f9 in photo mode and you switch into video mode, it's not necessarily going to still be at f9 unless that also happens to be the aperture that you had it set for the last time you shot in video. And there are some functions that are like very specialized and saved independently. So custom user modes on the camera, we talked about these in the still section in a previous video. I'll put a card to that. The custom user modes are saved independently for photo and video mode. So anything that you set in a custom user mode in your photo side of things is not going to be set up that way in your video side of things. On top of that, functions that are specific to customizations or settings in a mode will only be displayed when the camera is in that mode. So for example, any of the settings relating to recording audio. Audio is only recorded in video mode, at least with the exception of voice memos, but audio as a long-running kind of recording is only done in video mode, and you will only have options to configure that in video mode. Likewise, if you're in photo mode and you want to talk about, say, depth of field bracketing or exposure bracketing, auto exposure bracketing, since those are not concepts that apply to shooting video, they will be visible when the camera is in photo mode, but when you switch to video mode, those settings will disappear. So you can't change things on the other side of things without changing the camera's mode. mode. The one place I will point out that there is overlap is, oh, well, there's overlap, but there's difference is the customization of buttons on the camera. When you go into the customized button menu on the custom function 3 menu page, the button customizations, there is a column for photo options and there's a column for video options. The button customizations, you can have different buttons do different things in the two modes, and how this exactly gets shared between the two modes is a little convoluted because custom user modes will save that, but the standard normal modes, so aperture priority, manual, functional priority, shutter priority, and program, all share the same settings, whether the camera is in photo or video mode. So, switching between photo and video modes. The nominal way to go about doing this, and this is how the camera is set up by default and how you would probably do this most of the time, is to push the mode button on the top of the camera. This brings up the mode selection menu screen. I'm not exactly sure if Canon has a more precise name for that, but in this screen you can select which exposure modes, the custom user modes, etc. for your camera. When that screen comes up, you can press the info button on the back of the camera or the info virtual button on the LCD screen, and the camera will switch between photo and video modes. Now be aware, button customization on the R5 does allow you to move the mode button from the default position on the top of the camera. If you move it, that button that you've moved the mode function to is the button you push to bring up the mode selection and switch between stills and video. So how about getting things done a little bit quicker? Well, Canon also offers on the R5 a direct photo video mode switch button. Now this can only be configured to be the function of the multifunction or MFN button by the shutter release. None of the other buttons on the camera can have this function, but when you switch this, set this button to the photo video switch mode, the camera will, pressing the MFN button either in photo or video mode, will switch the camera directly to the other mode. So what exposure settings or exposure mode does the camera use when you switch? All depends on where you were last set in that mode. So if you were shooting photo mode and aperture priority, and the last time you were in video mode, it was set to manual, and you're in photo mode and you hit the MFN button to do the direct switch, it will also switch not only to video mode, but it will switch to the manual exposure mode that your video mode was last set to. Now the final sort of method of dealing with switching modes, and this is a bit more than just switching modes, is what I'm going to call the quick record shortcut. It's what happens when you push a button or program a button to movie recording, so start or stop movie recording, and you press that button while in photo mode. So what this will do is will automatically switch the camera from photo mode to movie mode. It will switch the exposure mode that the camera is using to the C3 custom user setting in movie mode or video mode, and it will start recording, and it will do this all in one operation. If you press the button again, it will stop recording and it will return the camera back to photo mode to whatever settings you were at previously. So you will need to set up in advance your custom user 3 mode or saved settings in video mode beforehand to have the camera jump to the right settings. I think by default it's set to aperture priority, but you probably want to change that. So that is switching between photo and video modes on the EOS R5 in a nutshell. If you found this useful or at least a little interesting, let me know by hitting that like button. If this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you're not already. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.